Portland's most respected and lowest priced office furniture dealer.
Office Furniture Direct.
Dobar dan. That means good day. Podcast PDX on the web, podcastpdx.com. It's Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. The name of the show is The Bogdanich Perspective. I'm your host, Paul Bogdanich. Welcome. The title of today's show is Printing and Propaganda. Printing money and propaganda. I figured I would take a break and discuss some of the things that we're good at today. Talkcast PDX is sponsored by Office Furniture Direct. OFDPDX.com is their website. Anything office furniture, delivery, cubicles, anything. Go to their website, check them out. OFD, Office Furniture Direct, PDX.com. Today, we go through the days. May 17th is Dinosaur Day. So that's interesting. And then on this day in 1792, think about that for a minute. 1792, the New York Stock Exchange was started. So the New York Stock Exchange, this is its birthday in 1792. So a very long time ago. One of the, the Declaration of Independence is 1770, War of Independence, 1774, 1778 for the Constitution, I think. And so within 4 years, they founded the New York Stock Exchange, which is interesting. But anyway, 1792. As a member of Talkcast PDX, we broadcast on YouTube, and YouTube is owned by Google, and you have to abide by what they call the community standards, and it's censorship, is what it is. You can't talk about this, can't talk about that. If you do, you can only say this and that, and so on. But it's getting out of hand. It's really, it's interesting. But before we start, it seems like they're all punch drunk. And speaking of punch drunk, if you could put up graph number 1 really quick. This is in France, apparently confined to the Normandy region in France. But deers in that region eat some kind of a spring berry, and there's all kinds of them this year. It's apparently a very good year for these spring berries. And then the berries ferment in their guts and develop alcohol, and they get drunk. This little guy was found in a swimming pool, right? So the animal control officers round him up and, take him out, and he's just standing around not knowing what's going on, So they're having a problem with that in France. You can take that down. The news in Ukraine, or the developments in Ukraine and the way they're reported more specifically, are illustrative of the problems that we're having with censorship, mostly self-censorship by major media organizations. For all intents and purposes, things are stalled over there. The mud is 6-8 feet deep because of the spring rains. Open field maneuver in any kind of heavy vehicle is virtually impossible. The only things that are moving are unmotorized infantry, things of that nature. So it's pretty much stalled. The Biden administration requested $40 billion in aid on top of the Lend-Lease program. So who knows how much money, but they requested a direct 40 from Congress, went to the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives increased it to $50 billion, put in all kinds of earmarks, for their own district and that kind of thing, as House members are, that's what they do. They steal. Sent it back to the Senate. Senator Rand Paul raised objections, wanted an auditing arm put to it, and things of that nature. In response to him making those requests, the Senate reduced it back to the original $40 billion that the administration had requested, and they'll probably vote it through. I think 18 senators voted against a preliminary motion. That's it, out of 100. So 17 out of 100 said it's ridiculous, but all the rest of them went through it. Very quietly, the United States and NATO is proposing a ceasefire in Ukraine. If I were the Russians, I would not agree to that, but we proposed a ceasefire. I don't know if that's been reported. That's odd. What I'm saying is they censor so much that you can't even tell what's going. If you read a newspaper, it's supposed to present what happened, and they're not even doing that. Because of the road conditions and open field maneuver in the bulk of the country, what you have, the fighting is concentrating in cities. And there was this place, Mariupol, that had a big steel mill where the Russians took over the district and the town, but a bunch of defenders went into the steel mill, and the steel mill had an underground complex, nuclear bunkers built by the Soviets, and so they were all entrenched in this area. They've been sitting there for about 2 months. If you've been watching, the Russians started to shower them with thermite. The whole area, they would just hit them with artillery shells that had little thermite grenades in them, and then the thermite would spread over the area, and they were doing this at intervals during the day. And within 48 hours after they started that tactic, the defenders in this steel mill surrendered, unconditionally, came out, searched by the Russians, put on Russian buses. The injured were sent to Russian military hospitals, and then the others are POWs. And, that's what happened. Reuters reported that as saying, quote unquote, buses with Mariupol defenders arrived in Novorossiysk, which is under the control of Russian separatists. The Associated Press said a Ukrainian military official said 260 fighters were evacuated from a steel plant in the city of Mariupol and taken to areas under Russian control. AFP News said more than 260 Ukrainian soldiers were evacuated from Azovstal, which is the name of the plant. And the New York Times said Ukraine ended its combat mission in Mariupol and said its fighters were being evacuated, signaling that the battle at the steel plant was over. That's how they reported that, evacuated. They asked I guess he's a permanent UN representative, a guy by the name of Dmitry Polesky, Russian at the UN, and, about all these conflicting reports. By the way, the Wall Street Journal, which I read, did not cover the story at all, didn't mention it. But they asked this Russian diplomat, and he said, I did not know that there were so many ways in the English language to convey a simple message. The Azov forces have surrendered unconditionally. And that's what he said. In commenting on the thing, an American journalist, guy by the name of Michael Tracy, said, this is why you have to assume that everything coming out of the Western media about the tactical progression of the war is a distortion. They're operating within an impenetrable superstructure of ideology that prevents the NYT and others from labeling this as a surrender. Which is too bad, because it raises interesting questions. Only 260 defenders. As a prior infantry, I find that curious. In when I was in, if we had a compound with only 260 defenders, we'd send 1,000 men and just root them out. I've been over in a day, but apparently they don't do things like that. It's dirty work and all, but that's in the unit, and in the unit that I was in, that's what would have happened. But no discussion of any of that. Not even the word mention of surrender. in trying to understand what's happening, I listened to some of the Russian bloggers. There's two that are pretty reliable. They're called Russians with Attitude. They're relatively nonpartisan. They cover the news. They look at what happens. They read both Russian and English, and they speak both Russian and English. So they're pretty interesting people. They're flabbergasted when they read the English press. They just think that we're stupid, basically, if we believe that. But they cover all kinds of things, and apparently a growth industry in Ukraine is going online and claiming that you're either under hardship or something and soliciting money. And so they wrote this thing and they said, this is Russians with Attitude, and this is their exact language. It's not perfectly phrased in English, but they go, finance tip for people suffering from crypto losses. Read some military fiction to get the style. Create account posting as Ukrainian soldier. Carefully grab a few photos from social media. Write Twitter threads about the epic victories and solicit donations from American women. And that's their advice for people in their area that lost money trading cryptocurrency. It's interesting in that in their official press, what they read and what they see, their language is much different. If you could put up, graph number 2. This is the Ukrainian foreign minister, and then this is the Russian foreign ministry spokesman. And they go back and forth over social media. This was over one of their social media, not written in English. It was written in Russian or Ukrainian, as the case may be. But this is translated. And the Ukrainian foreign minister said, if we don't get candidate status means joining NATO, it can only mean one thing. Europe is trying to deceive us. We will not swallow this. And then the Russian foreign minister, who's, down there, wrote back, but you've swallowed before and it worked out pretty well. So, that's the kind of things that they read. The Russians with Attitude who did the translation, called it a shitpost war, is what they were saying. And apparently this happens all the time. You can take that down. But their press apparently is very different, than our own, is about the only way that I can phrase it. From what I can tell, the Russian grain harvest this year, they're saying that it's going to be big. Total grains are going to be about 130 million tons. Think about that, 130 million tons of grain, including 87 million tons of wheat is what they expect. If it comes in at 87 million, that would be their largest wheat harvest on record. They hit 85.9 million tons of wheat in 2020, which is so far the record. And last year they did 76 million tons of wheat. Each year, 2020 was 133.5 million tons of grains total, and last year was 121.5 million tons of grain total. But big food producer, so they're very food secure. Back in our area, we have a shortage of baby food, Similac. I mentioned it last week. Real problem. Our House of Representatives scheduled hearings on it that don't start until May 26th. The people that looked into it say that the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, won't let the plant produce, for whatever reason, won't allow imports because of a labeling issue, apparently. What it is protection for the plant in the United States that normally produces the goods to shield them from competition. That's the real function, right? And but What they did do is, on request from a different agency, they took all the available Similac they had and sent it to refugees at the border, at the Mexican border. So that was their response. As the Germans in 1945 used to describe this, that's a bureaucrat with his hand on his cock and his nose in the rule book, as they used to say back then. And just terrible administration, nobody in charge. The Supreme Court had that leak, obviously, causing minor protests and all the rest of this stuff, throughout various parts of the country. I expect that the biggest one is where they target people's homes. But that aside, Justice Thomas, there's been no arrests, no identification of suspects. I expect they're probably not even really looking into it, and it's just nobody cares. Justice Thomas fulfilled a speaking obligation that he had made months before this whole thing, and they asked him about it, and he said, the Supreme Court leak changes the institution fundamentally. You begin looking over your shoulder. It's like an infidelity in that you can explain it, but you can't undo it, is what he said. And some of the journalists or people at the conference criticized his style on the court and asked him if he was ever thinking about resigning. And he said, I will absolutely leave the court when I do my job as poorly as you do yours, is what he said. So fairly fiery interview, but it was cordial, legal circles. He was speaking to some bar association, I think, or somewhere. Back in this country, if you'll put up graph number 3, please. The inflation reports came out for April. The Consumer Price Index was released on May 11th, and the Producer Price Index was released on May 12th, both last week, obviously. In the Wall Street Journal, and I didn't check the New York Times, but probably the New York Times, they covered the Consumer Price Index with an article, Putin price hike, all the rest of this nonsense. Did not cover the PPI at all. Last month, I read about it, and they gave it like this many words, very small little article to say that it came out and it was at a record number. This month, they didn't cover it at all. But these are your numbers from the PPI and the CPI. Again, the prices in the PPI, they show up in the CPI typically 60 to 90 days, somewhere like that later. But cereal and bakery products are up. Price of beef and veal went down a little bit. Price of chicken went down a little bit. Pork was up 4% in a month, mind you. Fin and shellfish up 5.1%. Eggs, 82%. That's not a misprint. That's the posted increase for producers for chicken eggs, 82% for the month of April. 10.3% for consumers. Fresh fruits and vegetables up 8.5% for producers. It depends where you live, whether they grow them locally or not. But if you're someplace where they grow them locally, then fresh fruits and vegetables are going to increase. Butter and oils, again, going up over 1% a month on the grain concerns out of Ukraine and Russia. Produce most of your sunflower oil and stuff like that. So, those prices continue to increase 10-12% a year. Gasoline went down last month, 3.2% for producers, 5.8% for consumers. Natural gas prices are way up, 4%, mostly on Europe trying to rid themselves of Russian natural gas, and raising prices worldwide. Passenger cars are still too expensive. Price of apparel was up for producers, down for consumers. Cost of shelter is still, outrageous and increasing very quickly. And cost of alcoholic beverages keeps going up, up, up. You can take that one down if you would. And that's, that's what again, the CPI was reported in the papers. The PPI was not. if you could put up graph number 4. This was Pew Research, and they asked people, what's your top issue? What are you worried about? Is it the war in Ukraine? What is it? What are you interested in? And this is for the United States. Where's my glasses? Anyway, I didn't bring my glasses out. April 25th to May 1st is when this survey was taken. I can't read how many adults, but in the thousands. And there's your results. Percent who say each of the following is a very big problem, a moderately big problem, a small problem, not a problem at all in the country today, the country being the United States. And inflation is the number one concern, obviously. Affordability of health care is number 2. Violent crime, number 3. Gun violence, number 4, but I repeat myself. Federal deficit, number 5. Climate change, number 6. Education, number 7. Illegal immigration, number 8. Racism, number 9. Conditions of roads, bridges, and other infrastructure, 10. 11 is unemployment, and the coronavirus outbreak is down there at the bottom of this list. But that's what Americans think is important. If you can take that one down and put up number 5, please. This is a worldwide survey about how would you describe the current economic situation in your country. And I thought it was interesting. They only gave them 2 choices, good or bad. And Saudi Arabia, 92% good, 8% bad. India, 74% good, 26% bad. Sweden, 61% good, 39% bad. And you can read the list. Germany, 54% good, 46% bad. Israel, 47% good, 53% bad. Canada, 38% in low. Notice when it goes negative that it goes severely negative. 38% good, 62% bad. The United States, below Canada, 35% good, 65% bad. And then you have Belgium, Hungary, Mexico, Poland, Great Britain, and France, all the way down in there, 30% good, 70% saying it's bad. And then below them, you have South Korea, Italy, South Africa, Chile, Brazil, Turkey, Spain, Colombia, Japan, and Peru. Japan is interesting, 14%. And Japan's a big industrialized nation. 14% say the economy is good, 89% say it's bad. Peru and Argentina are the only 2 on this list that are worse. 11% for Peru thinks it's good, 89 bad, and so on. It's interesting to notice, again, it's, reporting by omission. China and Russia are missing. India, way up there at the top, 74% good, 26% bad. There's an island off the southern end of India called Sri Lanka. Technically a separate nation, but, really part of India. But they didn't interview them. You can take that down. And the reason probably that they didn't interview them is they've been meting out street justice to their politicians. They burnt the homes of the politicians, are demanding changes in their parliament, and basically the civil government in Sri Lanka has lost control of the population for being corrupt and running into food shortages, which is what happens to governments when they're corrupt and you run into food shortages. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. We have the corruption firmly in hand. But the food shortages, like say, so far the only people they're starving are babies, apparently, and ones with dietary restrictions. So very small number. I find it interesting. I'm 62, I guess, 61. I'll be 62. Last time we had big inflation like this was under Jimmy Carter. James Earl Carter Jr. III was his name. Plantation aristocrat out of Georgia, basically. That's his family background. Engineer, combat veteran, brave man. His career after the presidency seems more distinguished than his career before. He was marginally alive, like 95, 96, something like that. But Reagan beat him for the presidency in 1980. And that's the last time that we had this magnitude of inflation. And the pitch that Ronald Reagan used to make in the 80 campaign was that he used to say that big government is not the solution to your problems. Big government is the problem. And a lot of people believed him at that point in time. I didn't especially fall for that, but that's absolutely true now. Especially under Biden, you have no leadership at the top. All these bureaucrats are just doing what they want. They're killing us. Literally killing babies with dietary restrictions, through their, rule-bound nature and just their inability to, they don't even, their goal is to follow the rules. They don't care what happens, to you or to me or to anybody else. And so I believe that statement now. He was him and his military bent gave nuclear weapons to Pakistan, illegal invasion of the Nicaraguans. He's the reason, Guatemalan death squads, the whole 9 yards in Central America, created Osama bin Laden, hosted him at the White House, called him a freedom fighter against the Russian invasion in Afghanistan. Not a great president, but I'm just saying rhetorically, what he used to say is big government is not the solution to your problems. It is the problem. And I think that that's true at this point. See if anybody else agrees, as we move into our election cycle. But I would just say about the news, there's two ways to propagandize something. And the first is misrepresent it, which we do on almost everything. But the second way is not to report it at all, to censor it, just not report it, pretend like it's not happening. And I fear that more. When you read a paper, there's a tacit assumption that if something important happened, it'll at least be listed, mentioned, maybe. I don't think you can rely on that anymore. I don't think you can go with mainstream. You just have to. The easiest thing to do is just stay in your own lane, concentrate on your own business, and keep an eye out for things that affect you. But if you're interested at all in trying to figure it out, you would have to make an effort, review multiple sources, different countries, that kind of thing, because you can't trust it. They lie by omission. And so, pretty tough. Speaking of pretty tough, if we go to the markets, please, put up graph number 6. This is just our graph on the S&P 500 from September 30th to June 30th, September 30th last year, obviously. I always use the S&P 500 because it's the only valid technical indicator amongst all these. Well, it's not the only valid. That one and the Russell 2000 are the valid indicators. The Dow is what's called a convenience index, and the NASDAQ is essentially a convenience index, tech heavy. And they list them in the paper and on the radio and so on, basically because they pay them to. Any kind of professional trader or professional technical analyst and stuff doesn't use them. For large capitalization stocks, they use the S&P 500. And for the lower capitalization stocks, they use the Russell 2000. But we use the S&P 500, large cap stocks. And here's your little chart. Most recent high, January 3rd. Then it hit an interim low on March 8th. Then it went back up. That was our rally, when we thought we were going to do well in Ukraine, apparently. 46.32 on March 29th. And then it's been down, down, down. If you'll notice, on April 29th, it hit a low of 41.32. The following week, which was May 6th, it went a little bit lower than that at 41.23. Last Thursday, it hit a cycle low at 39.30. Last Friday, it hit a cycle low, interim low, of 4,024 points. And then yesterday, it was down a little bit, closed at 4,008 points. So call it 4,000. This morning when I looked, it was up, but I don't know how it's going to close the day. We've already discussed the problems by ruining, the Federal Reserve by keeping interest rates at zero. You can take that down for a prolonged period of time. Has destroyed the bond market, basically forced everybody that needs more than a 2% return into equities. With inflation running at 8%, 10%, 12%, depending on what you buy, as high as 30%, if you happen to use gasoline. People seek higher returns, so it essentially pushed everybody into the stock market. So they have an obligation to support it, or else it'd just ruin the economy. It would overturn the political classes, and that's what's important here. That's the goal, keeping these people in power for another 30 years instead of just the last 30. But if it were not for that support, again, it's an argument. I say it would settle out around 3,400. There's people that say that that's, too optimistic, that it would go as low as 3,000. There's other people that say 3,600. And then there's people say right where it is, about 4,000. I think the Federal Reserve and the government proper have an interest in keeping it at 4,000. Not positive whether they're going to be able to. These losses in cryptocurrency constrict liquidity. The Federal Reserve reclaiming $95 billion a month in bond assets, in other words, selling them to the market, further aggravates the same trend. And the money flows are out of stocks, but they can support it. But so far, about 4,000. We'll see. If it continues to set new lows and breaks materially below that, then we have a change in situation. This morning when I looked, it was up 1.5%, so 40 points. For last week, for the week, it fell 2.4%, which is about 100 points, 99.5 points. But if you had a $100,000 portfolio, you should have lost 2,400. If we took a portfolio out of the top 30 stocks, the one that was capitalization weighted lost 3,100 instead of 2,400. The one that was equal weighted did better. It only lost 2,000 instead of 2,400. And if you do a broad portfolio with the top 3 stocks every sector, that one would have lost just 3,100. So pretty much everybody was either at the loss for the market or below it. Track 54 stocks, 15 went up and 39 went down. This is all last week. Stocks that went up over 3%, there was only 4 of them. Philip Morris, I've been talking about Philip Morris for a long time. Just a hell of a good dividend payer. Went above $100 from 98.94 to 104. It's a good buy. They pay over a $5 dividend, so it's over a 5% dividend. So anything under $100, I think, is a good price for that one. Comcast went up 3.7. Better news than people were anticipating. Earnings news. Adobe went up 3.7, and I don't know why. And Netflix went up 3.7, probably because it was beaten down so much. And those are your top 4 stocks. Below that, drop all the way below 2%. Verizon's, Coca-Cola, and Broadcom are the only stocks that went up more than 1, but less than 2. Stocks that went up, but less than 1%, you have Lowe's, Pfizer, Home Depot, Cisco, Johnson & Johnson, Google and Honeywell. Then 5 stocks that went down, but less than 1%. Sherwin-Williams, 3M Company, a real estate concern, ATT, and an industrial, Thermo Fisher. 11 stocks that fell more than 1, but less than 2. Walmart, UPS, Costco, Nike, Southern Energy, Amazon, Procter & Gamble, Intel, Chevron, Verizon, and Duke Energy. 8 stocks that fell less than 2 or more than 2, but less than 3. Abbott, Target, Abbott Laboratories, Target, Facebook, Berkshire Hathaway, Disney, United Health, Kinder Morgan, which is an oil services pipeline company. 5 stocks fell more than 3, less than 4. ExxonMobil, so weakness in the energy sector last week. A real estate concern, CCI, Crown Castle International is what that one is, but it's just a real estate trust. PayPal fell 3.5%. Next Year Energy, JP Morgan, and MasterCard. MasterCard fell in between 4, but less than 5. MasterCard, what do we have here? MasterCard, ConocoPhillips, the other AMT, the other real estate concern, and Microsoft all fell more than 4, less than 5. More than 5%, 6 stocks. NVIDIA, trading and their ties to cryptocurrency, basically. Bank of America Corporation down 6%. Apple down 6.5%, largest company in the world. Another real estate trust, Prologis, they got themselves in trouble on derivative obligations against the price of interest rates. So they fell 9%. Tesla fell 11.1%, and Bank of America fell 15%. Walmart reported earnings this morning. Matched revenue expectations of the analysts, missed on earnings, but more importantly, had to guide down their earnings estimates for the remaining 3 quarters of the year because of inflation. I haven't looked to see how hard their stock was hit, but your large retailers, Home Depot, Lowe's, Costco, those guys all start to report about now. They always get delayed. Cisco keeps itself on the same schedule, even though it's not a retailer. But over this coming week, we'll see what the retailers have to say and whether the market can hold 4,000. As you know, my advice is rather dour. I would be in cash until much closer to the election. I think that once the mud disappears in Ukraine, that the situation is likely to change drastically. I think that the fertilizer constrictions caused by the sanctions, caused by the invasion, will have food inflation going up rather rapidly at the same time, and that's my view. Thanks for joining. Sorry I don't have anything better to report, but I didn't see anything. Yeah. Look pretty carefully. Again, it's to the point where it's what they're not reporting. What they don't even bother to mention. That's becoming important. I think that's a problem. Nobody else does, but I personally would like to have some assurance that when I pick up a newspaper, that if something that I should know about, good, bad, or indifferent, happened, that it would be reported. But that's not the case. Anyway, thanks for joining the Bogdanich Perspective, May 17th, 2022 on Tuesday, always Tuesdays. Thanks for joining. Hopefully see you next Tuesday, and do widzenia. And that means goodbye.
Portland's most respected and lowest priced office furniture dealer.
Office Furniture Direct.